So we now have footage of this strike that the Houthis were able to carry out in Tel Aviv. If we can roll this here, a drone was able to penetrate Israeli airspace, which the Israelis have said was the result of human error, not a system error, and strike an apartment building near U.S. consulate, because the embassy is U.S. something, because the embassy is now in Jerusalem, killing an Israeli civilian, an attack on civilian infrastructure, which we should all condemn here. At the same time, what everyone at CNN or elsewhere would say in a situation like this is that Israel is known to embed elements of its military infrastructure inside Tel Aviv, which, according to
human
Israelis,
shields, right?
Human shields. That does not justify the killing of civilians. For some reason, that is always held up by the Western media as justification for the killing of civilians in Gaza, because they will accurately say that Hamas does embed its military infrastructure inside its civilian infrastructure. Israel does the same thing, absolutely does not justify attacking civilian infrastructure.
Yeah, that is a very good point. We could put a tear sheet up on the screen, which from Haaretz, which spells out what this could mean. You already have this conflict has spread to Iran. You've had this conflict spread to Lebanon, certainly ongoing back and forth between Hezbollah and Israel. And the Houthis have been out there doing their thing. This is a major escalation, though, from the Houthis. The headline here is Houthi drone strike on Tel Aviv marks a new phase in the October 7th war. The Houthis say Tel Aviv will now be a main target. An excellent deal for Iran, they say, as Israel's multi-front war just got tougher, though the worst drone threat remains Hezbollah in the north. Another analysis that I read, Ryan says, describes the Houthis as a determined radical enemy that is hard to deter, and they invest a lot of effort in psychological warfare and are armed with increasingly sophisticated long-range weapons. They also talk about the failure in allowing this drone strike through, because of course Israel has extensive air defense systems. The failure to operate that air defense system, as the Air Force has admitted, looms behind Friday morning's attack. A preliminary investigation shows the drone was detected heading toward Israel, but for some reason was not considered a threat, and the military did not try to intercept it. So for Israelis, this sense of insecurity was a real goal of this Houthi strike. Mm-hmm. Of that we can hit you in Tel Aviv,
right?
They expect some danger in the north of Israel has been evacuated, certainly in what they call the Gaza envelope near there. There's obviously acknowledgement of the dangers that lurk there, but that combatants can strike you even in the heart of Tel Aviv is another level of sort of psychological warfare.
Yeah, and the apartment apparently was home to displaced people from inside Israel, who've been moved, because the north and the south have seen significant displacements as a result of this war. So Israel struck back hard, hitting the port of Hodeidah. Now, Hodeidah is the main entry point for humanitarian aid. The seizing of Hodeidah by the Saudis and Emiratis years ago is what really precipitated the humanitarian crisis, the famine that we saw over years. The Israelis, according to the reporting, have had a real difficulty in finding where the Houthis are stashing basically their military infrastructure, their drones, their missiles, and so they went right for the civilian infrastructure. They hit a Hodeidah power plant and hit this fuel depot, and they argued that, and this is the reporting in the Israeli press, that it's okay that their attack on the port is going to disrupt humanitarian supplies getting through the port, because the Houthis actually steal the supplies for themselves and don't distribute them to the Yemeni citizenry, which of course Israel has profound respect for. The precise same argument that they have used in why they're inhibiting so much of the flow of aid into Gaza. That
striking
they say
UNRWA facilities.
that Hamas is just stealing all of the aid. So it's the exact same argument that they're making there. We don't have this element yet because I just got this from a couple sources who do humanitarian work, but they're saying that the number of trucks that have come through from July 1st to July 15th, average of 86 a day. which is up from, it was a 76 in June.
Into Gaza.
Into Gaza. They have been saying we need at least 1,000 a day. Like that's what humanitarian aid works. You need 1,000 a day for the people there.
86 is effectively nothing.
Yeah, 86 is very, very close to zero. And getting reports now that the Israelis have now come up with a new method. They're asking the ships and the trucks for their, quote, donation number. It's like a new bureaucratic hurdle. What's your donation number? And all the humanitarians, what are you talking about? Donation number. And so then they're all being turned back around. You don't have a donation number. Back of the line.
Wow.
Don't have a donation number. Where do we get a donation number? Well, you don't have one.
And the U.S. isn't even pretending to help anymore. The vaunted pier, announced to great fanfare in Joe Biden's State of the Union, has been completely dismantled after utterly failing in its mission. I mean, the amount of aid that got through the pier was pathetically tiny. And in fact, I think there's a real argument to make that it gave the Israelis an excuse because they effectively then, oh, well, the U.S. is dealing with this, but we don't really have to do this anymore. And since the pier was put into place, like I said, now it's been completely dismantled, but the post-pier aid provisioning was much worse than the pre-pier aid provisioning. And so we continue to head down this path of utter humanitarian catastrophe and crisis. We covered here the letter in the Lancet that says, the true number of deaths is probably more like 186,000 when you count not just the bullets and the bombs, but when you also count starvation, communicable disease, et cetera. And Bibi Netanyahu heading into town this week to speak to Congress with basically no end in sight. I think his calculation is basically like, Trump's probably going to win, and I'm just going to wait it out and do whatever the hell I want to do. Yeah,
I think it should be easy for people to understand why the death toll would be at that level. If you imagine the Washington, D.C. area, and which is about 700 to 800,000 population, so you expand it out to include a lot of the suburbs, you put a wall around it, and you stop anything, for the most part, stop anything from getting in, stop anything from getting out. You make the water filthy. There's polio virus now circulating in Gaza, and then think about your own family and social circle, and how many people just wouldn't be able to survive that.
Wouldn't be able to make it
because of appointments that they can't get to, medication that they need to survive, or just the medical crises that arise from drinking the contaminated water and then not having the ability to treat that. You can imagine that of that population, a significant percentage just simply wouldn't be able to survive it.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, my daughter had to be airlifted for emergency surgery this week, right. Which,
any chance she survives that without?
No,
that?
Very unlikely.
Right.
And even just normal things that you would think about, like they originally thought it was her appendix rupture. If that goes untreated, just done. That, which is a very normal thing, you have sepsis and you're done. So yeah, it's not hard to imagine why those numbers would be so high. At the same time, we have significant news out of the highest international court, the International Court of Justice, ruling that the Israeli West Bank settlements are illegal, that Israel must immediately cease building new settlements, that they must actually evacuate settlers out of the existing settlements. Let's take a listen to the announcement of that decision.
By 14 votes to 1, is of the opinion that the State of Israel is under an obligation to cease immediately all new settlement activities and to evacuate all settlers from the occupied Palestinian territory. In favor, President Salam, Judges Tomka, Abraham, Yusuf, Shway, Bandari, Iwasawa, Nolte, Chargeworth, Brand, Gomez, Robledo, Cleveland, Uresco, Tladi. Against Vice President Sibeltinde.
So quite an overwhelming decision there.
Yeah, even the American judge voted for it and put up F6. So it's known as an advisory opinion, but even if it was a non-advisory opinion, it still has to be enforced by the Security Council. But the savage nature of it and the broad support suggest where the global politics are headed at this point.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, wild story that we published over at Drop Site News by a Tel Aviv reporter named Yaniv Kogan. We can put up this next element. This is F7. He got a hold of a plan that was reviewed by the Israeli Security Council, being considered at the highest levels, to basically turn Gaza over to a puppet regime that would be under the control of the Israelis, but would be modeled after some type of Saudi or Emirati type situation that where the number one kind of priority is just getting along with Israel. And they think that, and you can read the entire report in here over at Dropsite News. But they think that if you fix the textbooks, just redo the textbooks, redo the curriculum, that somehow, that's going to end the resentment. I think every single school in Gaza has been destroyed. So where the kids would even go to read these reformed textbooks remains an open question. I remember interviewing somebody early on from Gaza about the textbooks, because this is a big thing that you hear from Israelis. Right. The whole reason they hate us is these terrible textbooks. And there's some things in the textbooks you're like, well, that's bad.
Right.
Like that's actually anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And that you shouldn't be teaching kids that. And so I asked him about this. He's like, look, your entire upbringing of hearing drones flying over your head, of being treated, if you're in the West Bank, being treated horribly at checkpoints, or having your parents treated horribly at checkpoints, or being unable to travel, but if you're in Gaza, just being aware that you're not allowed to leave, almost for any circumstance, including health-related ones.
Yeah.
And the reason is the Israelis. Like, the idea that you need to be taught resentment in school is so detached from the reality of their quote-unquote lived experience.
Yeah. Well,
that you just cannot change it.
Think about the situation right now. Kids aren't in school. Children are not going to school. Right. So in this view, hey, problem solved, right? No. They're not being exposed to these bad textbooks, yes. Even as they're being bombed to oblivion and starved and dehydrated to death. So I don't think that the reformed textbooks are going to really solve the problem here for Israel. I mean, what does this even look like? Is the thought basically we'll install something like a PA, Mahmoud Abbas, like just a collaborator regime, and that this is going to have any kind of legitimacy? I mean, it just seems like a way for Israel to have total occupation control, but have some sort of a feint at, no, it's the Palestinians that are really running the show, just as they do effectively in the West Bank. Yeah, that's it. And it's also, I think one reason it's getting kicked around seriously is because there's so much pressure to plan for the end of the war that they have to kind of say that they're planning for it, when in fact there doesn't seem to be any actual indication that this is going to be wound up at any time soon, that the status quo of just complete catastrophe, ongoing daily catastrophe with sporadic raids and bombings and massacres is actually tenable for now. Yeah. Last thing to wrap up here, I did pull the, a story that was published in the Israeli press about Kamala Harris. You could put this up on the screen as we're all trying to read the tea leaves of what her Gaza-Israel policy might be. This is the Jerusalem Post, which is right-wing. After Biden's endorsement, what has Kamala Harris said about Israel? And I believe it's in this piece. I read a couple of these to get a flavor of what they were saying. They described her as being sort of like the bad cop to Biden's good cop. Biden. Now, that would be reversed in our view, but her basically being tougher on Israel and saying some more humanitarian things. We have some reporting that she has been more concerned about Palestinians, raising those concerns internally. We also have some reports that her foreign policy advisor, her top foreign policy advisor, tends to come more from the progressive wing of the foreign policy establishment. So, do you have any sense of what we can legitimately say about what Kamala Harris's policy might look like on this issue? No, it's very hard to say. Now, I've seen some serious concern that some serious concern from kind of the hawkish wing of Washington's foreign policy establishment that she has some advisors who are significantly less hawkish. And so there's going to be a major jockeying, I think, for who surrounds her staff-wise. Right now, the kind of the Ben Rhodes wing of the Obama, the best you're going to do within this Democratic Party is basically Obama's
like
Foreign policy.
Foreign policy, where he was willing to buck AIPAC and do the Iran deal, where he was not interested in just cozying up to Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis, and that he was willing to push back on Israel.
Yeah.
Like none of this is saying that it's the greatest foreign policy that the left would ever want to see, but it was a break with Washington, and Washington hated it. Like the blob hated it. In fact, it was Ben Rhodes who created the term the blob.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Ben Rhodes was his national security advisor.
Right.
Obama's. And he and the Pod Save bros basically were at war with the blob. So it's an intramural fight, but out of those, there are some advisors in that world, anti-blob world, that are now Kamala's advisors. And so if they can grow their membership there, then you could see a better foreign policy than Biden.
I also just feel like, I genuinely think if you took just random run-of-the-mill Democrat on this issue at this point, they would be better than Joe Biden. Because Joe Biden has such an ideological commitment to Zionism and the state of Israel as he thinks of it from 1972 or whatever, that he is effectively unmovable on the issue, even when it's become clear that it is directly contrary to his own political interests. If you just had a normal Democrat in there who was responsive to the political concerns and just weighing this in terms of a cost-benefit analysis in terms of their own personal political ambitions, I think you would have ended up in a different place than Joe Biden, especially as you clearly saw the numbers with young people, certainly, key Arab American populations in the state of Michigan, with Black Americans who were very dissonant, by and large, from the Biden Israel no matter what policy. And then you add to that the fact that Netanyahu is such a partisan figure at this point and such a Trumpy right-wing aligned figure that I feel like, I'm not trying to raise hopes too high here, but I feel like it would at least be a little better than what you're getting out of Joe Biden with his bear hug approach, which has been an utter and complete disaster for Palestinians first and foremost, but also for the U.S. and ultimately, I think, for Israel. Yeah.
It's an interesting window into the world for young people on the left here. If you came into politics at around 2015, that's when you started following it, you came into a world in which your hopes and dreams had something to attach themselves to, in the manner of Bernie Sanders running for president, followed by the kind of upsurge insurgency inside the House, and so you developed this idea that your political views could be represented inside our political system, and that's just a complete aberration. As Krystal and I have experienced most of our lives, what you're actually more likely to get from the American political system is bad and slightly less bad.
Gradations of bad.
Yes, and I worry that we are moving back into what we're more familiar with, which is gradations of bad.
Yeah, that we're all forced to settle for, whether we want to or not. Yeah, that seems to be where we are. I think that's a pretty accurate summation. Probably a good place to wrap up this very lengthy show. Ryan, thank you. Is it you or Emily that's in tomorrow?
I'm in tomorrow too. Emily's just started Unheard.
You're right.
She's got her
hands full. Not that you don't also have your hands full. You did just also lodge Drop Site News, which you guys should
I get
go
to be
and
my
support.
own boss. So.
I highly recommend that.
Yes, and we still do have that discount code. So it's dropsitenews.com/counterpoints, 20% off for anybody who wants to support Drop Site News. Go to breakingpoints.com to support this program. To celebrate Sagar's wedding, his nuptials. Support him with a breakingpoints.com premium membership. All right, love you guys. We're gonna get the show out as quickly as we can. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people. And if you'd like to get the full show, ad-free, and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com. That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.